Mohammed wanted us to look at Frontline. Now we can see, step one, our indicator, our Williams percentage R indicator, have changed that minus 50 level into a support. That means we can assume that the momentum to the top can escalate. So yes, my red line, that 40-week moving average, have also changed into a support, and that is seen as positive. And we've got this beautiful cup and possible handle formation here, assuming $9.21 starts to change into a support. But also have a look here, Mohammed. We are maybe seeing a small left shoulder head and a right shoulder, because for the last 3 weeks, this share has found resistance there, and it stopped making new recent highs, and that is seen as a negative. So assuming that neckline holds, and assuming that resistance at $8.34 starts to change into a support, back to that neckline of the cup and handle formation, we can see Frontline a lot higher. Obviously, that strong support at $7.04 have to remain in place. You can use that as a protection level. Your 40-week moving average is your next strong support that has to remain at $7.58. But coming from oversold territory with this possible cup and handle formation, you can probably expect higher levels on Frontline. Siboniso wanted us to look at the Brent crude oil price. Oops. Siboniso, there is a massive inverse head and shoulder formation. And I'm calling it massive because let's have a look where it starts. It started around May 2019. So this formation is longer than 2 years. So the probability or the possibility is there that it can take 2 and a bit years to play out. So I've got a left, and maybe I should draw that for you, left shoulder, another left shoulder, and this massive head, a smaller right shoulder. And then we refer to a false break or a whipsaw when that neckline, the formation was confirmed, but it didn't really break out and trend to a side. And then when it pulls back and finds support beautifully on that red line, our 40-week moving average, and again, that then tells us this might have been a technical positive goodbye kiss coming from oversold levels, breaking that minus 50 level into a support, starting to consolidate above that neckline of the inverse head and shoulder formation. And the full target of this inverse head and shoulder formation, Siboniso, is about $128. And I know it sounds absolutely impossible, but that is the price action that this formation can take the Brent crude oil price to. When will the optimism around this price, or pessimism I should rather say, because I mean that would just spike inflation and a lot of other price actions should the Brent crude oil price go there. Obviously, this inverse head and shoulder formation will only become obsolete when the lowest level of my shoulders, and in this case it's the left shoulder, waiting at $55.90, only when that level starts to change into a resistance can I say, hey, this formation is off the table, it's no longer that optimistic, and we can expect lower levels. By 40-week moving average is the critical level, Siboniso. It's waiting at $67.08. As long as that level remains a support, we assume that the momentum to the top, the long-term sentiment towards the Brent crude oil price is positive. Obviously, that strong resistance was found in the week of the 5th of July, and that is waiting at $77.82. Once that level starts to change into a support on a Friday close and remain a support, we can say, hey, that resistance has now changed into a support. It clearly shows us that the buyers are stronger than the sellers, and we can see higher levels on the Brent crude oil price. Gary wanted us to look at the rand against the British pounds. And Gary, it's actually, it almost looks like a mirror of the rand against the American dollar. So let's have a look. Let's start at the Williams percentage R. We can see that it changed that minus 50 level into a support, immediately retraced again. So it's not sure whether it wants to keep that minus 50 level on my Williams percentage R a support, which means that we can assume that the momentum to the top can continue, or can escalate. And below that minus 50, it tells, hey, the momentum to the bottom can escalate. Let's have a look at that 40-week moving average. That is the critical level. Why do I say that? As soon as that 40-week moving average changes into a support, and that is waiting at 20 Rand 13 of the Rand against the pound, above that level, we can expect for long-term investors a weaker Rand against the pound. As soon as the Rand starts to consolidate below that level, we expect a stronger Rand against the pound. Now, I've got here this inverse cup and handle that almost played out completely, but also take note, and I want to draw that for you. I've got a possible left shoulder, smaller left shoulder, false break and a whipsaw on my neckline, massive head, and a possible second right shoulder. Assuming that the Rand can go back to that neckline, and that level, I'm going to give that to you now, that level is waiting at 20 Rand 80. Above 20 Rand 80, that neckline of the inverse head and shoulder formation can take my Rand against the British pound, and I'm taking the full length, look at it, I take the full length of the head, projected upwards from the neckline, can take it back to 22.66. Obviously, as long as this neckline remains a resistance and the Rand starts to consolidate below 1944 again, have a look, that is the bottom part of my two shoulders. Below 1944, we can expect further strength, obviously, in the Rand, and this possible inverse head and shoulder formation will be off the table. Also take note there, Gary, my strong support, that tweezer bottom in the week of the 31st of May and the 7th of June is a critical level, and that support is waiting at 1897. Below that level, we can say, hey, the weaker Rand is off the table and we can see more strength in the Rand against the British pound. Let's just have a look at this full inverse cup and handle has played out. If I take the largest part of the cup and I project it downwards from my handle, meaning that full target of this inverse cup and handle formation can take the Rand back to 1782, assuming then obviously all these levels start to change into resistance levels and that the momentum to the bottom continues. Rian wanted us to look at GoPro. Listed on the NASDAQ, at some stage a share that was absolutely loved and adored by the world. Have a look. Rian, I mean at some stage this share traded there around $98. At the moment it's looking at $90.74. Yes, it is in oversold territory. That is the place where the buyers are starting to take note and want to move closer to a share. And yes, I've got this possible morning star formation where I've got a negative bearish engulfing candle coming from low levels after a sell-off, followed by a doji candle and then a bullish engulfing candle. And the morning star formation is a 3-candle pattern. It tells us, you know, the dawn and the darkness is behind us. It's a new morning. But then that strong resistance of last week, waiting at $9.76, has to change into a support by Friday close. But more importantly, Rian, what worries me here about GoPro is this inverse possible cup and handle or lower highs. My handle needs to be a bit higher. It needs to touch the neckline. So there's my cup and there is my handle formation. So below this neckline, this share can go a lot lower. Obviously above my 40-week moving average, that's when all the long-term investors take note, a sigh of relief, and is happy that the long-term sentiment towards this share has now changed to positive. And that 40-week moving average is waiting at $10.16. So that critical level of support, that neckline, $9.31 Rian, has to remain in place in order to make sure that this inverse cup and handle does not take the share a lot lower. So let's hope that the buyers make use of this oversold situation and this morning star formation to take the share maybe back to that strong resistance of $11.57 and especially at $12.97, because above that level the negativity around this inverse cup and handle formation will be off the table and become obsolete, and then we can assume that the momentum to the top can continue. Sias wanted us to look at Macy's. Ticker on the New York Stock Exchange is M. And we can see at the moment And I want to draw that line for you. See, as we had a possible inverse head and shoulder formation, and I'm going to draw that for you. Left shoulder, massive head, and then right shoulders. False breaks, whipsaw, another small right shoulder, and now it's above that neckline. But now, obviously, the full target we know of the inverse head and shoulder formation, assuming that neckline waiting there at $18.87 remains a support, is the full length of the head projected upwards. Yes, my 40-week moving average is still a support. That is positive, waiting at $17.29. Yes, my Williams percentage R indicator is approaching overbought levels, but I can see that the momentum to the top is still in place. Yes, the share bounced, found resistance, pulled back, but that turnaround, that support where the buyers protected the share price is higher than this previous support level, and that is seen as positive. So the critical level that needs to change into a support is obviously that resistance there, and that is waiting at $23.76. See us above $23.76, the optimism around this inverse head and shoulder formation will just be confirmed. And let's be a little bit greedy and show that the full target of this inverse head and shoulder on Macys can take it back to $32.98. I've highlighted the 40-week. It mustn't go below that level, waiting at $17.29. I would not buy the share now. It's too late. Rather wait for a pullback. Wait for your Williams percentage R to become oversold, and then wait for a turnaround candle or pattern, and then accumulate. Unless you want to chase this share, and then I would use that neckline as a possible protection level, assuming that you want to ride this inverse head and shoulder formation to higher resistance levels. I just want to have a look and see if there is maybe a window there, which always acts as a nice target. No, there isn't, to the top for investors if they want to make use of an inverse head and shoulder or a turnaround pattern on a graph. Don't forget to send through your requests for next week's show. Have a fantastic week. Take care.